Yes, I'm Ben. I guess, yes, I'm the instigator of the project. A couple of years ago, I went into full high gear because I wanted to create a community that I could live in. And what I was looking for was a kind of living that was for someone who's an introvert, but who also loves community. And I know that a lot of the people who get drawn to this project, can everybody hear me okay? Okay, a lot of people who get drawn to this project seem to have a similar thing. So the model of co-housing that we're working with is based on everybody having private ownership of their own home, and they can have it as a little, beautiful little vacuum or retreat away from the world. But as soon as they come out their door, they've got the access to a community that's hopefully thriving and working on things. So quickly, housekeeping. I think the biggest thing to know is that there's 2 toilets in there, in that corridor over there. Another piece of housekeeping is that we're actually leasing, you can use a visual aid, we're leasing this part, the whole right-hand side of the property, to the original owners who run a landscape office and a nursery there, but we're not really supposed to be on their side. So what that means practically is there's that line of beautiful shrubbery down there. We don't go on that side of the property today. You're welcome to stick your beak over that line there, but if we can stay on this side, I think you'd find it hard to get through, but that's the same for the house. The office next door is off limits as well. Photos. Who is our photographer again today? Hands up. There we go. So if anybody doesn't want to be in a photo at all, can you let Fleecy please know? This is Fleecy. Yeah, just let Fleecy know. Otherwise, we're going to kind of assume consent for photos. It's only just for promoting this project. One thing to say about this project is that us, the community members, you're meeting the developers is when you meet us. So it's not, we're not just a sort of commercial interest looking to make a profit out of this. If we make any profit, it's just going to be simply on being able to buy our own houses at close to cost. So, yeah, you're meeting. I mean, that's something else for because a lot of people might have just come just simply to see what these people are up to in Eltham. If you might be a local, we welcome you. And we're we're starting to already feel this connection with Eltham, even though we haven't moved on to site yet. And yeah, if there's especially if there's anybody who's here because they have concerns about a new development, which is always something that you might want to, cautiously come out and see what it's about. Please come and chat with us because we want to meet, because we want to integrate into the community here as much as possible. All right, what was that? That's the housekeeping, the vision. I've said that already. That was my vision, is having a place as an introvert where I can have community around me. But I love community. I'm like a community nerd, but I'm an introvert. And, I love the way community or group dynamics play out. And one of the things we'd say is about this project is that they've had to play out pretty rapidly because we got together and we got the full support of property collectives, which are our development managers. So they basically, this is Tim. They take care of all the details, so we don't have to become experts. We take on the risk as the joint venturers running this project, but property collectives covers us with that experienced eye. But when we found property collectives, it only took us, I think, a few months of working together before we found this site. And this site was such a catalyst because when people come here and they look at the potential for in this space as well, which is going to remain our common area after we move in, it just snowballed this project rapidly. So we've been playing catch up a lot. It's been fun. The community dynamics of, the kinds of themes that happen in community discussions and decision making and occasional turbulence, they've all been pushed right forward. And when I said I'm a community nerd, I'm enjoying that. There's a way that I think that integrated group that has, strong sense of will, of shared vision, the ability to see each other past just disagreements or entrenched positions. It's absolutely essential to make sense of what's going on. As a group, make better sense than individuals, I think, and we're finding that here. All right, so that's probably most of the vision. But the other pillars of this place, which Tim's going to go into, one was we based it on the Danish model, CoHousing, just practically, because I think it's a perfect model for simplifying what we do into having individual homes, but lots of design principles around coming together and having shared space and optimizing that shared space. General principles of co-housing, such as a focus on sustainability, definitely have that here. We're only looking to, can we go back to the site? We're only going to put structures or building on about 30% of the area, which gives us a lot of natural environment to work with. We're going to have 7-star ratings, I think, at least. So sustainability, community, I've definitely spoken about that. Affordability, it's not necessarily the cheapest place in Melbourne, but we think it's a very good bargain, for living in such a beautiful area. Okay, last things is no, that's all. That's pretty much all I need to say. So I think we're going to hand over to Tim. One last thing is that I think you're going to talk about this. So we're looking also to recruit. So we definitely need to recruit 6 more joint venturers in the next, before construction goes ahead, and maybe a couple, 2 or 3, even in the next 6 months. So that's what a lot of people might be interested in. We're going to give you next steps if that's what you're interested in as well. So yeah. This is Tim from Property Collectors.
I might just run through what we've got planned for today. So Ben's just done the intro, and I'm just going to talk a little bit more about. Let me over there. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the project itself and I suppose the building group model, the model that we've been using over the last 12 years to enable a lot of these projects. Then Ross and Ben and Teresa is just going to take everybody on a bit of a site tour. So we'll get up, walk around, everybody can kind of get a sense of the site. And then we've got a couple of our friends here from DKO. Rochelle will talk about architecture, and John, our landscape architect, will talk about the landscape. And then we'll do a bit of a Q&A and panel discussion, and then kind of try and wrap that up around midday. I think some of the members have brought some snacks and stuff around lunch, so if you do want to hang around afterwards and ask some questions that you didn't get to ask during the Q&A, or please do that. I think people will be hanging around afterwards. So I might just whip through. Ben's covered a lot of this, the vision and the pillars, and if I just dwell on this for a little bit, when Ben sort of talked about this community and how it unfolded, and it did actually happen quite rapidly. This is the 10th collective we've put together since 2010. And before this project, we'd never bought the first site that we looked at. And I thought that it would never happen, actually. And for some reason, we found this site and we managed to buy it first time. So to Ben's point before, the group had to come together pretty quickly. But in establishing these visions and pillars, it also happened pretty quickly because everybody's on the same page around what they wanted to achieve. And in terms of creating that strong co-housing community, one of the key things the group wanted to do was create an intergenerational community, so multi-generational. Yep. Yep, sure. Sorry. So that's, I think, something that we're striving for. And in particular, I think Ben mentioned we're looking for another 6 members. And we are looking for some families to join. I think we've got a nice mix at the moment, but we are keen to sort of make sure that there's a real diversity in the members of the community. So I mentioned the structure we're using to enable this project is pretty much the same one we've used since 2010 when we did our first project in Northcote. Since then, we've put together 10 collectives building 80 homes using the same model. But this one is the largest one at 20 homes. The key difference with this building group approach, and Ben mentioned it before, is that the members of the community become the developers. And the key difference to your typical sort of development model is that a core collective or a significant part of the group come together before we buy the land. And that's because that group has a vision around what they want to create. And, you know, if they don't come together and spend the time working through that vision and defining what that is, then, you know, how do we find a piece of land that suits that vision, right? So step one is, you know, like-minded people coming together to pool their financial resources to buy a piece of land that's going to fit their requirements. We've sort of done that now, so we've acquired the land and we're in sort of step 2. At that point, we'll create, we've got one title here on this block, we'll create 20 titles and there'll be an owners corporation, and then all the members of the collective will get their own title. And because the model has allowed everybody to be the developer or a co-developer, that's how we can deliver the homes at cost. So if you come into the building group, what you're actually doing is you're taking a fractional ownership over this title. So there'll be, in some very simple terms, you'll have a 1/20th interest in this title. And then by the end, you'll turn that into a direct home ownership of a single title of your dwelling. So it's quite a different approach to sort of your typical development approach. No romance without finance. Typically, a lot of the questions we have are around, well, how do you fund this? And so this slide is very simply, sorry, let's start again. This slide's really just about the finance process and how it all works. And sorry, I'm not sure how I get to my second screen now. I'm gonna need this. Here we go, second. So I'll talk while I go through this. So the process really is the key to this finance strategy. Is that the members of the collective all contribute the developer equity. So this is how it works in the development game. Whoever controls the equity gets to control the outcome. And all of the members in the collective are putting in their equity as the developer equity as the project goes through. And by doing this, they get to control the outcome. So all of the members of the collective will just pay cost for their home. But to do that and to realise the project, they have to put in about 30% of the total development cost of the project. And that's through the life of the project. So it's not all upfront. We cash flow the whole project through the 3.5 to 4 years of the project. We've completed this stage, which is the land acquisition. So we are banking with Bank Australia, and we got a 60% loan to purchase the land. And critically, Bank Australia is one of our favourite debt funders because they give us several liability loans for the land and also construction. Not all the lenders do that, but Bank Australia do. So that means that if there's 20 joint venturers, everybody's just liable for 1/20th of that loan, as opposed to having exposure to the other 19/20ths, if that makes sense. So for construction, we'll get a second loan from Bank Australia, and that will be around 75% of the costs exclusive of GST. And once again, that will be several liability, which is really good. And then right at the end of the process, we subdivide all the titles and we go through a thing called a partition process. And that's when all the individuals, so 20 people, you all have your own different financial situation and your own strategies to cover your 1/20th of the costs. So at the end, we'll have a liability to pay back Bank Australia for that second loan. And the way we'll do that is by everybody having their own individual strategy to pay out their 1/20th. So some people will be getting home loans, other people might be selling homes and paying it out in cash. For people that are taking home loans, typically the LVR is about 55 to 60%, and that's because we borrowed 75% and you've acted as the developer and you've created some equity on top of that. So this slide just talks about the structure itself. So there's sort of three entities. So the owner of the land is this land code. So it's the Brougham St CoHousing Proprietary Limited, owns the land currently. Property Collectives has created a development company, and the job of that development company is to contract with the builder and obtain the debt funding, and on behalf of the landowner, so the Brougham St CoHousing Proprietary Limited. And what all of the current joint ventures have done is they've signed up to this joint venture, which is a partnership, a tax partnership. And what that has done is it's given everybody a beneficial ownership over the land, but it also gives each member one vote on the management committee. And the management committee makes all the decisions about how the project progresses. So we don't get a vote on the management committee. We make a lot of recommendations for the group to endorse, but most of the decisions are simple majority, but there are some that are special majority, and that's, I think, what makes these sorts of projects unique. In that the project is for the members, by the members, for the members, and the members get to have a say in how it progresses. So once we get through to subdivision and that partition process happens, we then move out of the development phase into the operational phase. All of these three structures basically then get wound up because they've done their job. Their job is really to build the building and create that operating system for the community to now be a part of. And as you see here, the 20 titles get created, and then we have an owner's court to manage the common property. In terms of the project milestones, we are sort of about a third of the way through Gate 2. So we're preparing to submit a town planning application in August. And the presentations from Rochelle and John are just work in progress. So they're not finished. It's a bit of show and tell today. So hey, this is where we've got to. Then I suppose the other key dates are Gate 6. So commence construction, August 2024, and then complete August 2025. So as Ben mentioned, we are looking for 6 new joint ventures to join before the middle of 2024, before we start building. Because we'd like to have everybody on board before we start building. So in thinking about the dwellings themselves, and Michelle will go through and give you a sense of where we're heading in terms of the design. We have tried to create a range of different dwelling types to suit different requirements of the community. In terms of the total costs, our forecast is that they're going to range between $540,000 to 1.2 in terms of cost. In terms of value, that would translate to between 600 to 1.3 and a bit. And then critically, and this is what we find with a lot of our projects, one of the hardest things for people to come up with is typically the equity. And so for those dwellings, the equity requirement is about 170,000 to 360,000. So that's just to give you a sense of the sort of range across the dwelling types that we're looking at. It is a bit of a different project given the lot itself. So the lot's about 7,000 square metres, and as Ben mentioned, we're only looking to build on about a third of that. So there is a lot of common area. The community has decided that it wants this as the common house. So this will be a community asset. So when you're thinking about this project and looking at the dwellings, they're probably a little bit unique for an Eltham context. And when you're thinking about the cost of the dwellings and the value, it's important to think about the fact that you'll get strata title ownership of your lot plus 1 or 2 car parks, depending on how many bedrooms you get. But then you'll have shared ownership of the communal areas via the Owners Corporation. And what that means is there's this common house and the heritage studio just out the back, which we're not really planning on doing much on, apart from replacing the roof because it needs replacing. But that's about 150 square metres to 250 square metres of communal buildings. There's also a heritage shed out the back as well. So everybody will have shared ownership over that. And then, there's about 2,500 square metres of communal gardens, excluding obviously the car parks. So it is a bit of a unique proposition, but it's worth bearing in mind when you're sort of assessing just the dwellings, what else is I suppose on offer with this project. We sort of talked about it before. We've got 14 joint venturers at the moment. We've got 3 members. We are looking for 6 new joint venturers to join before we start the build. And after today, we'll send an email out to everybody that registered. Really, if you are interested at the end of the day, the first step is to fill out an application form to become a member. It's just an online form. It doesn't commit you to anything, but it's kind of our starting point for really starting a more serious engagement with the current members of the collective, and going through a process of working out whether or not this is a project that might be right for you or not. So I think the next thing we've got is a site tour. Maybe Ross and Ben and Teresa, do you want to come on? Yep.
What's the difference between a member and a Genvier, and then how much do you want for the 6 new people to be?
So we have members. The way we built this community was that everybody that was interested in becoming a joint venturer became a member first, and the membership has sort of a $1,500 membership fee, and originally that was to help pay for all of our consultants when we were looking to acquire the site.
Refundable, by the way.
And it is refundable if you don't decide to continue to become a joint venturer. Joint venturer is a bit more serious because it involves you actually signing up to our joint venture deed and legally becoming a member of the collective, and that then gives you rights and responsibilities under the joint venture structure. So becoming a member is almost like a gateway to eventually becoming a joint venture, if that makes sense.
And how much do you want from the first 6?
Well,
Next 6?
that we'll circle back to that at the end because it depends on a few things. Depends on the size of dwelling that you want and which dwellings are still available. So it depends. The slide before here where I was talking about the range, everything, all the dwellings sit in between those range. I picked the smallest and the largest, right?
So investment for the next 6 people would be between 540 and 1.2 or 170 and 360?
Between 170 and 360.